So welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. And my guest today is Kaylor Betts, who is a coach and host of the Mental Wealth podcast. So Kaylor, thanks so much for coming on, brother.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me, brother. I'm excited to see what comes of this convo.
Yeah, well, we've had a few combos before. I've been on your podcast, and I think we just connected more or less online. I think we follow a lot of the same people, kind of have actually a lot of similar followers as well, or common followers, and just kind of, I think, preach a lot of the same stuff. And I think what maybe one of the best places to get started, Kaylor, is why did you start the Mental Wealth podcast? Like, what was the reason for doing that?
Yeah, so I would say that the main reason why I started it is twofold. I'm obsessed with podcasts. Like, I absolutely love podcasts, and it's funny. I kind of was at where I think a lot of people still are in not really realizing that, let's call a spade a spade. Anyone can kind of start a podcast, right? Like, I kind of thought you had to just, I don't know, have a deal signed or something like this. This was like back in the early days when, podcasting was newer. And, I found out that, I could start a podcast. And I also would say the second reason is because I am obsessive about human optimization and growth and how to achieve your highest quality of life. That is what I'm obsessive about. And I have been obsessed about that because I come from a lot of pain. I come from being in a battle with my mind for about the first 25 years of my life. And I've been at the lowest of the lows, but yet I believe it mostly comes from my sports background. In sports, they're very much, they instill this ambition inside of you to be the best and to not accept mediocrity, to not accept losing, essentially, at least not accept not doing everything you can to win. And I had some pretty amazing coaches in my life that kind of instilled that fire inside of me. And I always said, like, even though I really struggled and it was hard to get out of bed for most of my life, and I never really actually even experienced joy up until the last few years of my life, even though I was there, I always thought, like, I'm gonna fucking get over this. Like, I'm gonna get through this. Like, there's no way. I'm just gonna keep fighting it. And my mantra was, I will always fight it. And I just committed. I went all in and I said, I'm going to turn this around. And I just studied human optimization. I tried everything, and slowly but surely the pieces came together. And now I'm in this incredible place and have been for quite a few years now. And it's so liberating. I'm in a place I never thought I would be, mostly just mentally. And then obviously now my external circumstances have exceeded where I thought I would get to as well. And I put the two together. I'm like, I want to now go out and, I've been a coach for almost 13 years. I started off in fitness, nutrition, and then holistic lifestyle stuff. And then I'm like, now I want to go out and help people do the exact same thing as I did and transform their life. Because as you know, Mike, a lot of people out there are struggling. And I thought, well, the podcast has to be a part of it because I love podcasts. It's a great way to reach people. And here I am. And now I'm a coach and helping people worldwide and doing my part.
Yeah, and that's really honest of you to say, and I really appreciate that. And I think that's part of the reason why we connected online. Like, I just really like all of your posts. I find that, like, all of your posts really resonate with me. I think that a lot of people find that they probably resonate with them as well, and that's probably why you have such a big and loyal following online. And I think that when you said, like, you're very open about, like, your past and your pain, leading that to like where you are. So and this may be a bit of a long sort of answer to this question, but like, why were you in a bad place, and how did you, like, come out of that place? And I mean, that's basically probably what we're going to talk about for the entire podcast. So I don't expect you to have a 30-second answer on that, but where, just maybe start off with like how did you get to that place, and what was the initiating part of sort of like coming out of it?
Yeah, so I'll try and give you the cliff notes, which yeah, still may be a little lengthy, but there's three reasons. I've done a lot of reflection on why I believe I got to this place where I was in a quote unquote battle with my mind, for just a lack of a better way of putting it. And to clarify that, for anyone who doesn't really know my story, like, it was anxiety, it was depression, it was lack of focus and ADHD. And um I just felt like shit all the time and low energy. And there's three reasons that I believe contributed the most to me being there. The first one was actually physical health. It's like no one taught me how to, eat properly. And I'm going to focus primarily on nutrition. For me in particular, I have now found out that I have a lot of foods that wreak havoc on my biology and my gut, and that I'm sensitive to based on the anti-nutrients in them and the defense compounds in a lot of these plant foods. And I was eating a lot of nuts and seeds and even a lot of vegetables, and a lot of things that were, and gluten and dairy, that were wreaking havoc on my gut, my biology. And, my theory is that, 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, as I'm sure Mike. And so absolutely, of course. I mean, serotonin is, dopamine is the hormone of like anticipatory want more and motivation, but serotonin is like how to feel calm, cool, and collective and happy once you get something. And I really felt like I was very low in serotonin for the first 25 years of my life. And of course, went to a doctor, and, their solution was take an SSRI to regulate your serotonin production. And it's like, okay, but like, there's gotta be like more to that. Like, I shouldn't have to take a pill. I'm 25 years old. I don't have like, bad health decision or bad health, I don't have any ailments or conditions or anything. Like, why do I have to take this pill? And then I started to understand that nutrition has a lot to do with it. I started to understand that 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. So I thought, maybe I'm not eating the right foods. And I cut out everything. I cut out the dairy, the gluten, and I cut out, a lot of foods that are likely, or that a good percentage of the population could be sensitive to. Even foods that have a lot of micronutrients that we consider quote unquote healthy, for some people, they don't really, do a lot of favors for. So anyways, so I cut out all this food, and it was like the light switch turned on, and I did a proper elimination protocol, and it changed everything, for like my anxiety, my depression. So physical health was a big reason. And I just didn't know that a lot of the foods I was eating were wreaking havoc on my biology. And this is why it's crazy that most humans haven't even gone 24 hours without eating, like, to just see what's it like when we remove all the foods that we're sensitive to, right? So that's the first thing. Physical health, it just wasn't in a good place there. My stress hormones were really high as well too, because I was always anxious and whatnot. And like, when cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline are high, your serotonin is not being produced, because you don't need to be happy when you're in danger, right? Which is what your body thinks,
And Kaylor,
you're in
did you
danger.
have your cortisol levels tested during this period, and they were elevated, or did you sort of just know through your own kind of intuition that, you know what, this really feels like I'm in a high cortisol place right now? And
I did have my cortisol levels tested. I mean, I think it's tough though, because I mean, it's just like
it
with
is,
testosterone, there's so much variance, right? Like,
yeah.
so I did have it tested. I do remember it being like not regulated. My cortisol, that was like what my functional medicine practitioner said, is just like, it's like not regulated. But I mean, look, I didn't need a test to know that, like, I was like chronic stress, anxiety, so I part of it was just an assumption for sure. But yeah, so, and I did have a lot of my hormones tested, and then I was like low in some nutrients, like, B12, and other things that would, contribute to my energy and overall the way I felt. So yeah. And then, so there was the physical health side of things that very much was not doing me any favors. The second piece was purpose and meaning. I was not fulfilled. And not only that, but I was like, I got conditioned to, and I'm not going to pose any blame here, but I got conditioned, as most people do, to, hey, the way in which, it's like our parents, they basically say, and they come from a place of, they mean well, and they believe that they're doing the right thing. There's no manual for parenting, but they basically say like, hey, you show up in a way that's convenient for me. You follow the rules. If you show up as your authentic self, I don't like that because it's messy, and you hit things and you yell, and I don't like that. So mask your authentic self and please me, and then I'll give you love, care, and attention. Right. And if you don't, and you show up as your authentic self and you're messy and you hit things and you yell, then I'm going to starve you of my love, care, and attention. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to put you in your room for a timeout. So think about how that conditions us. It conditions us to go out and please people. Maybe if I please the external environment and everything and everyone, then maybe I'll get love, care, and attention, which is what we want the most, because for most of human history, we were thrown to the wolves if we didn't get it. Right. So we then learn to prioritize belonging and attachment to people over authenticity. So what I did based on that conditioning is I just went out and I just chased. I just tried to, I didn't graduate high school. Like I was a fuck up in those ways. And I just tried to go out and like, please everyone, and just like, and achieve external things. And maybe then I'll feel worthy. Maybe then I'll feel like I'm good enough. So I just tried to go out and chase it. And I just burnt myself out because that's exhausting. And I wasn't fulfilled. Like I wasn't doing things from a place of actually being fulfilled by them. I was doing things and achieving things based on a fear of failure and not being enough and trying to please everyone around me.
So you feel like you're devoting all your energy sort of to others instead of like working on yourself. And as you know, we have limited energy. So we have to make sure that, we conserve our energy as much as possible.
You know what's crazy, Mike, is like literally everything I did. And this is hard to admit. This is getting vulnerable here. Like every single fucking thing I did was for validation, pretty much. Like, this is going to make girls like me more. This is going to make my dad be more proud of me. Like, this is going to make, it was all, I never for a second, I don't think ever did I really, like, besides maybe small things behind the scenes, but never did I really take the time to, like, big decisions to be like, how do I like this? Do I really want to do this? Like, is this going to make me fulfilled? I never asked myself that question until I found out what was going on.
Interesting.
And there's one, go ahead, Mike. And then there's one more. Go ahead.
I want to hear your last point.
So the last one is a big one. And I would say this is the biggest contributing factor. And I already kind of got in it with the purpose thing, but it's our subconscious programming and conditioning, right? It runs the show. 95% of our thoughts, ideas, actions, and emotions are subconscious. That means that 95% of the time we are literally like a computer program running on autopilot. And what that code is that subconscious mind runs off of is it's our environment and our experiences from our upbringing, which gives us evidence. And then we formulate belief systems about how the world works and who we are as a person. And that's basically like our worldview. And that's like our core beliefs. So I had some, let's just say I had some conditioning that happened in my external environment and experiences that made me kind of develop some belief systems that, like, I'm not fully good enough. I'm not worthy. Like my dad was like he was hard on me, and I've forgiven him for that because he was doing the best he could with what he had, but he was very, very hard on me. He had high expectations of me. And so like I was conditioned that like, and I was a fuck up. I never did good in school. I could never focus, all these things. So then I started to develop these beliefs about how I'm not really that worthy. I'm clearly not good enough. And he didn't give me a lot of love, care, and attention in those moments when I fucked up. So like I started to be conditioned like, okay, the way the world works is that I have to go out and I have to achieve things. I have to show up. I have to like impress people and please the people around me. And if I don't, I'm not worthy. So that fucked me up, like I started to feel very uncomfortable in my life and my body because of that, and walking around with those beliefs.
Yeah, I so there's definitely, a few things that I wanted to mention there, and I really appreciate you sharing all that and being so vulnerable with everything, Kaylor. But in terms of like the medication that you tried, like I think that happens to a lot of people. Is, and again, I'm not saying that medication, even SSRIs are a bad thing. Like if they work for you, then amazing, man. Like go for it. Like even Jordan Peterson, who I think you follow pretty closely as well. I know for a period of his life he did use them, and I think he said that they were effective. But like you said, a lot of your serotonin production is in your gut. So like one thing I do to influence that is I eat a ton of sauerkraut. And actually, I don't really like it very much. So when I say I eat it, I just put it in a shake and I drink it because I really don't like it. I mean, it's okay if I have like a sausage or something like that, but eating it on its own, I find to be pretty gross. But I actually around the exact same age, Kaylor, I was around 24, 25, tried a SNRI called effects or venlafaxine. So SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. SNRIs are serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. So not the exact same class of medication, maybe as what you tried, but something very similar. And I kind of had the same experience where I just didn't feel like it gave me any kind of benefit, whatsoever. So because of that, I discontinued it, after a few months. And then there was only one other medication I tried. It was called Strattera, and that's used for ADHD. And again, for that, I just found again that I wasn't effective. I didn't like the way that it was making me feel. And I was also forced to kind of look inwardly, so to speak, and to try to heal myself through nutrition, through physical exercise, and things like that. And coming back to what you were saying about your father, and that, like, it sounds like maybe like his father was also hard on him. And I think that I never really realized the term or looked into something called generational trauma maybe until the last like 6 to 12 months. And I see how that happens, how someone's hard on their kid, and then when that kid grows up, then they're hard on their kid. And then so they think that it's okay because we think that, oh, if someone did something bad to me, then I could do something bad to them in a way. And again, like you're saying, like it's not like these parents are trying to do something bad at all. Like they're trying to do their best and the best with what they have. And I think sometimes I'm so lucky to be born in the year that I was born, just because I have access to all this information, all these podcasts, people like yourself, lots of other people online. Like I don't know if I would have discovered all these people and kind of become the person I was if I didn't have access to all this information. So my father obviously didn't have access to the information that I have now, so I have to have some forgiveness there in some ways. But the other thing is that you can't just accept it, and I think that's what you've done, and I've certainly done as well, is that you can't just accept that. And like when you identify that, hey, maybe there's some like generational trauma here, then you got to say, okay, I got to go to work here and make sure that I don't pass this along to anyone else, and that this doesn't happen to anyone else, and you just talk about it and get the message out. And I'm not sure if Kaylor, you came across that term in your kind of journey, or if you sort of like felt that generational trauma might be something that may have happened to you. Is that something that you've kind of come across a little bit in your research and in your journey?
Yeah, so I love everything you said there. A couple things before I get into the generational trauma thing. Number one is I made a vow to look, this isn't, the medication, the pharmaceutical stuff, it's not my scope of work. In fact, the offer that I although a lot of people do think, just because when I tell my story, a lot of people do think I'm anti-pharmaceutical. I'm not necessarily anti-pharmaceutical. I'm anti not looking at all your fucking options, right? Like
Hmm.
not actually looking at the root cause of something. That's what I'm anti. And look, if you've done everything when it comes to the root cause, or if maybe it's too far gone or whatever, I'm not against. And I'm not against the pharmaceuticals, and I'm also not here. It's not even within my scope of work to even make a recommendation in that regard. All I recommend is, and what my offer is I help people upgrade their mental health without drugs. And that doesn't mean I'm anti-drugs. It just means there's a lot of things you can do outside of drugs to improve your mental health. And that's what I'm here for. So, that's just my story. I'm obviously going to tell it. And I get a lot of flack for that when I tell my story. In fact, I put out a video that said pretty much what I just said. And like, it's just, so many people that just get triggered by that. And I'm like, so I'm not allowed to tell my story that, I didn't have to take SRI, because that's my second point. I actually didn't even take them. I actually got prescribed them. I still think I have a bottle of SSRI sitting in my medicine cabinet in the house that I grew up in. So I never actually took it. I took Vyvanse for 2 years in my early days. That's ADHD medication. So I took that, but other than that, I actually didn't try anything else, because I just thought, maybe I will, but let's try some other things first. Now, in terms of the trauma, and we talked about my father, and look, I want to say my father in so many ways. Look, I believe that everyone at heart has the potential to be a good person, and this is maybe controversial. Some people don't like this, but I even think like murderers, I think people in jail and people who commit like really heinous crimes, I don't think that's the true essence of who they are. I think that comes from the conditioning that they had when they were a kid. And I think we're all here as survival machines, like, and our psychology can just take over. And for whatever reason, some people have been conditioned to, they need to do that kind of stuff in order to just feel safe. And I know that sounds really messed up, but I really believe that everyone at their core could be a good person if all the bullshit was cleared. So I think my dad is, and my parents, I mean, I think they're unbelievable people. But I just think, yeah, I think that it was from his conditioning that he was very hard, and he wanted me to do good, because I was his kid. And I also think there was some things going on where, like, and this is very common, that parents will project their own insecurities out onto their kid, and they'll almost use their kid as like a measure of how worthy am I. If my kid isn't smart and isn't getting good grades and doesn't get a good job, and I can't tell my friends that my kid is doing really well, well, then I feel inferior, I feel inadequate, right? So I think there was some of that going on. And yeah, there's generational trauma. It's really quite interesting. And I always used to be a little skeptical, because I thought generational trauma is like kind of woo woo. But
Hmm.
there's actually some good studies on that, I believe, now. And not only that, what actually made me understand how generational trauma can have an effect is, like, think about how, if we look at animals and, the instincts that they have, or even the evolution that we've been through, like, there's some instinctive things that we are actually just born with. And it's because of the previous generations that's how they've had to survive, right? And the body will adapt to almost everything, or at least it will try and adapt to everything. So it makes sense that, like, trauma would actually generationally make our genetics different as we evolve, and then actually have an effect with future generations, when you kind of look at it that way. So I'm like, this is pretty interesting. I'm not an expert on generational trauma by any means, but I do buy into the concept, and I think there's something going on there for sure.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right that there's something with generational trauma, because I even saw Jordan Peterson tweet out something in where he saw in like animals, like it's very evident that like this is something that absolutely does happen. And I think that we don't really well, we are now, but we haven't recognized it in the past. And I think that, just by talking about it now, we are in doing good, because it is very, very common. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who suffer from, generational trauma. And the thing is too, is that, when you stop it, it's not like you're just helping yourself. You're also helping the people that have maybe implemented that trauma as well. And I think that that's a very important message, is that even if someone has caused trauma to you, you can absolutely forgive them first, and then number two is that you don't necessarily have to like repair the relationship without you know uh, in order to forgive them. You can absolutely forgive someone and not necessarily have that relationship with someone. And I think that that applies to all relationships, is that forgiveness is really more of a personal process. It's not something that you like, people always think, oh, I forgive this person, now they're like my best friend again. It's like, well, maybe, but that doesn't have to be the case. Like, you can forgive someone and then move on. And so instead of harboring stuff in your own mind, you're able to forgive and you're able to move on. And I think that that's something that a lot of people sort of like struggle with, because again, forgiveness is like, hey, I forgive you, now let's be friends again.
Yeah, I think that like forgiveness is so huge, because resentment, I mean, it's Jordan Peters, speaking of Jordan Peterson, I mean, he's talked a lot about this. Like, it serves no purpose,
Mhm.
right? It's like, if I were to resent my dad, it's like, okay, cool. We could have a debate on whether or not he's deserving of resentment. I mean, I don't think he is, but if someone said, because of some of the things he did, they might, or some of the things their father has done, well, it's like, if you're holding on to resentment, how does that serve you? Like, so I look at forgiveness as so crucial. Number one, I've completely and entirely forgiven him, because look, he did a lot of, he did so much for me too. He changed my fucking diaper and wiped my shitty ass in the middle of the night, even just once, when I
Mhm.
needed it. Right. And like,
Yeah.
and then multiply that by a thousand, or who knows, hundreds of thousands of other things that he did for me. Like, he was there, he showed up, he cared, and he did the best he could with what he had. So I do think that he deserves the forgiveness. However, forgiveness, like you said, I believe is not necessarily always about how much they deserve forgiveness. It's that you deserve inner peace, right? Like, you deserve to move on from it, and like not have to hold on to that resentment and live with that, because it's so heavy. It is like really heavy resentment, and it's hard. I mean, I still have people in my life that I have to forgive. My dad isn't really one of them anymore. I did, but I I think he did. I think he really did the best he could have, and he did a lot of amazing things as well too. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So like, I'm actually extremely grateful for the experience that I had with my dad.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to know, and just know that, like, again, that forgiveness is a personal process. And if you can repair the relationship, great. But if you can't, that's okay too. One thing too, like, Kaylor, you put out a video, maybe it was a few weeks ago, just on the victim mindset and mentality. And one thing that I really like about the stuff that you're doing is that it's almost like, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's like an aggressive approach to like depression in some ways, but it's like, instead of focusing on the depression, just focus on like being awesome. And then if you focus on being awesome, and then you focus on, your mission, and you focus on, getting things done, then like you're not going to have that depression. And I'm not saying that, you shouldn't go, see a therapist, or you shouldn't talk about your depression or things like that. Those things can be incredibly valuable. But at the same time, too, you need to have something that drives you. You need to have a purpose. You need to have a mission. And I find that that's sort of like the messaging that sort of comes through in a lot of your posts.
Yeah, like, I, in my bio, I have like, not the average mental health advocate. And that's maybe the way I would describe it, because I have a very unconventional approach. Because guess what, the reason why and I'm going to be really straightforward here, I'm one of the few that transforms a life. Like I literally went from darkness to light. I would say I'm not only like average mental health, I think I'm superior. Like I'm friggin' stoked on life. And I don't think a lot of people get there. And I think it's because I did unconventional shit. I questioned the narrative out there. I questioned the system and the ways in which we talk about how to improve mental health. And one of the ways in which I'm not stoked about is we talk a lot about like, look, I'm all for opening up, being vulnerable, like acknowledging your feelings and your emotions and like sitting with some of the things that you've been through that have been really hard. But then it's like you have to get to a point where it's like, okay, now what am I going to fucking do about it? Because I can't control a lot of those things. And that's why I love Jordan Peterson, is because he's the same way. And that's why a lot of people don't like him. That's why I get a lot of criticism, because, you know, I challenge people to own their shit and focus on the things in which they can control and don't play a victim, right? Like, yeah, there are victims out there. Like things happen that are outside of our control, but what use is it to dwell on it all the time? And to say, well, this is why I can't get the job, this is why I can't move on and be happy, like there's no use to that. We all have things that we're dealing with, and for some people it's their race because of where they live, for some people it's their sexual orientation, for because of where they live, for some people it's their mental health, for other people it might be because they can't walk or they're in a wheelchair. Like everyone has varying degrees of adversity and lack of privilege that they're dealing with. Even white males, right? Like I couldn't get out of bed in the morning for years, or at least it was a struggle. So yeah, like everyone is dealing with a battle that we, often don't even know about. And it's time to, not only give the approach of talk therapy and sitting with all the trauma and things that you've been through and like focusing on like, okay, but now we're going to move forward. Now we're going to actually reframe that into, this isn't my crutch. This is like, this is actually the biggest opportunity if I can see it, because my struggles and my pain were my biggest opportunity. But you have to reframe that, and you have to take personal responsibility and own where you're at, what you've been through, and say, I don't care how hard it is. I'm going to go out and make it fucking happen. And that's essentially what I did. And I think that's what mental health needs more of, is like, yes, empathy, compassion, looking at your emotions, looking at your past, but then let's focus on what we control and go out and do something about it.
Yeah, no, I love that, Kaylor, because I sort of have, the same approach, because like, again, I think therapy and sitting with your emotions is fantastic. But I also think that, try to do something where you're going to like kick ass in life, so to speak, or something that like makes you excited. Like starting a podcast is something that, that can be helpful for depression and for anxiety. And that's obviously not, something that's like a conventional treatment, but like just trying to do something else, like trying to do something with your life, trying to find that mission and that purpose, that's what can really, help you. And, for example, a lot of people, when they come to me, they always want time off work. And I'm not saying that like I never give people time off work. Like sometimes you're going through a period where, you just absolutely need that break. And that's totally understandable. But for the most part, a lot of people, when they take long stretches off work, their depression just gets worse.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is you need to, find and strike some type of balance where, like, yes, you're sitting with your feelings. Yes, you're talking about your anxiety or your depression, your PTSD, or whatever it is that you have. And you need to balance that with something where you're actually pushing forward and doing something. Because, when you get really busy and you have this like mission, and someone asks you, like, are you depressed or are you anxious, or even like, what's the purpose of life? It just becomes like a stupid question, because you're so motivated that you're just going for it. And I think that we need, more people, like yourself, talking about things like this, because, there's enough people out there and actually too many people out there are coddling people, I think, in a lot of ways. And instead of coddling, what we really need to do is to motivate people. And I think there's a big difference between coddling and encouragement. Coddling is not good for anybody. Coddling just makes you think that the world is really safe, when in fact the world actually is very, very dangerous. And again, JP says you don't want to make the world safer, you want to make yourself stronger. So you have to look for ways to make yourself stronger, so that you can handle adversity in your life, and that so you can do things on your own. But when you're coddled, that mentality never really comes into play, and then you're always sort of have this safe play approach, which just doesn't work in real life. It's never really going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, there's a good quote, like, don't prepare the road for your kid, prepare your kid for the road, right? Like, and we have gotten, and some people hate this, but we've gotten a little bit soft. And I think it's a huge disservice to our mental health. And I think what it does, and I know there's a fine line here, right? Like there really is, like, there is a time and a place, again, for like empathy and compassion, and like, and sitting with our emotions and acknowledging them, honoring them. But I think where we've gotten to is, what we have to realize is mental health is like, it's hot right now. Mental health is hot. So it's like, and what a lot of people will do, and it comes, I suppose, from a good place, but they open up the invitation to people to get validation through their struggles, right? And to sit with their struggles. Like, a lot of people would say, well, why would someone like over exaggerate their mental health struggles, or why would they want to stay in that place? And it's like, there's so many reasons. When you understand human psychology, there's so many reasons why people would want to stay in that place. Because a few reasons. Number one, it's very familiar, and we love familiarity because our subconscious mind just wants us to survive. So it wants us to keep going through the same pattern. What better way to survive than to just continue doing what we've always done that's brought us to survival today? And we can predict the future. At least we know what we're going to get. It might not make us happy, but it's certain. The second thing is, there's no responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, when you're at rock bottom, you don't can't get any worse. You're not vulnerable to failure. And like, as soon as you step into the realm of possibility and uncertainty, and you start taking control of your life and not playing a victim anymore, there's so much responsibility in that. And that's what we're ultimately afraid of, is failure, right? So that there's so much reason why someone would actually want to sit and stay in their mental health struggles. And then not only that, but we get validation. So we get to blame all of our problems on everything and everyone, of why we're not actually where we want to be, which is what the ego loves. And then you get people saying, oh, you're such a warrior, like you're a hero, and all this stuff, and on social media especially. And it's like, yes, I do believe that we should open up and be like very honest about where we're at mentally, and I think that's actually a really important step. However, don't stay there. Own it. And say, hey, I know I'm in this bad place, but here's what I'm doing about it. And then, yes, people like me and you, we need to encourage, and therapists and the mental health system, like, we need to encourage people to be like, yes, let's honor where you're at. Let's acknowledge it. But now we have to focus on what we can control, and we got to own it. We got to go out. We got to face it. It's going to take courage, and we got to do something about it to get you to that place you've always wanted to be.
Yeah, and it kind of actually goes along with what. So I had a guy, David Hawkins, on a couple weeks ago, who's an ex-military guy. He was in the military for 9 years. So, when he came back, like a lot of veterans, he was struggling a lot. So he was using, a ton of cannabis. And, for that period, he probably needed to just use the cannabis and to just chill. Like, he probably wasn't in a space where he could actually have the mental capacity to work out and do all the things that, we actually talk about that would improve your life. But, after a certain point, he said, like, like, I can't just like stay here. Like, okay, like, the cannabis has helped, but now, because of the cannabis, and because, I am healing, and I don't have all these, intrusive thoughts that I had before. Now I can, go work out and do things and change my life. So, we're not saying again that, like, pharmaceuticals or whatever you kind of use is never has a place. Like, it definitely does. But once you get past a certain point, then you got to take responsibility for yourself. You can't just look for others to help. You do have to do it yourself. And I think, that's what a lot of people are afraid to do. They're afraid to do the work, and then coming back to another thing that you said, I wanted to comment on is that, people don't try, because when you don't try, then you don't have a chance to fail, right? So that's why people sort of like staying, where they are. Like, you could have a podcast that could completely flop, right? So, like, if you start that, then you are, potentially setting yourself up for failure in some ways, or you have potential to fail.
and
But
and on sorry, on top of that, all the work that's associated for it, now you have to work and get off your ass. Anyways, I
yeah.
just want to add that.
No, exactly. I mean, yeah, like, instead of, watching Netflix, and you gotta, coordinate with someone and get them, to make sure that they're on time, that you're on time for the podcast or whatever it is. And, even you and I had a mix up a couple months ago. We were supposed to do this a month or two ago, and, it happened. But, we found another time today to kind of get it done. So yeah, I think that people definitely are afraid of failure. But like you said too, I think they're, I kind of should have mentioned that too. So I'm glad you brought it up, is that they also are afraid of the work. And when you but the thing is too with that, I find, is that when you think about work, it seems like it's so difficult, but then once you start it, you actually enjoy it, and you're like, man, like this, like why was I worried about doing all this work? I'm actually enjoying it right now.
And this is, I agree with everything you're saying. And it's like, this is, I get some people, particularly the people that don't like what I'm doing, or even like potential clients or anything, like, it's hard for people to wrap their head around. So it's like, Kaylor, hold on, you don't have a psychology degree? And I'm like, no, I actually didn't even graduate high school. And hold on, so like, you don't have any like, credits or like credentials or anything like that? And I'm like, look, you know what? And this is how I think people have a hard time wrapping their head around. And obviously, Mike, you're a good person to talk to about this. I have nothing against formal education and credentials. I mean, I think those can be extremely beneficial and serving of people and where they're at, and it's so necessary. But like, for me as a coach, like, it's pretty fucking incredible how, like, so people can't wrap their head around. So you're saying that I'm going to see a professional, like a psychiatrist or psychotherapist and therapist, and it's not working. And I go to see my doctor, and like, that's not working. And they're pretty much just giving me kind of one option here. So like, but you're telling me a high school failure is going to be the one that's going to help me. And I'm like, you know what? It's pretty incredible what you can do when you start to make your bed in the morning, and you start to actually have a North Star and something you're healthily obsessive about that starts to light your soul on fire, and you improve and deepen the connections and fulfillment in your relationships. You start to get a hobby that's outside of you that you start to do, and you start to get motivated to every single day. Now all of a sudden you're cleaning up your diet. Now all of a sudden you're working out more and moving your body every single day, and you're putting your feet on the earth, and you're getting out into nature. You're regulating your circadian rhythm and getting on to bed on time and waking up in the morning, getting into those deep sleep cycles. Now all of a sudden you're working on stress management, and you're implementing things like basic meditation and breath work and cold showers. And like, yeah, you start to all of a sudden feel a lot better. And I don't know, I don't think you have to have this amazing degree on the wall sometimes to help people get through that. And although it certainly can help, but I think that that's where people fail, is we get so textbook. And it's like, guys, we don't need a double blind placebo controlled study for everything. And if we don't have something on it, well, we can't implement it. It's like, how about you just go out and you experiment on the basic principles that like we've known have helped humans for so long. And I think that's why I'm in business, is because all those things that I mentioned, they're really hard to put a plan together and do yourself and be driven and inspired to do them yourself when you're at rock bottom and you're burnt out and overwhelmed and lack of energy. It's really hard to do those things. And also, a lot of people don't even know how to do breath work or cold showers, or even know where their purpose is. And they don't even know that it's actually about creating your purpose rather than finding your purpose. Like, that's why I think we are struggling with mental health is because we totally underestimate all those things when in reality they're actually the things that may be the most effective.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I used a cold shower, yesterday. Yesterday in the afternoon, I was feeling a little bit sluggish, and then I ran on a treadmill, a couple miles, and then went in the sauna, and then did a cold shower, and then I felt completely different, and I had this conversation with one of my friends the other day, because we're kind of just chatting about substance abuse and things like that, and like, of course, like the easiest way to kind of make yourself feel better is to pour, a stiff drink, right? And then obviously you're going to feel better. But what are you doing then? You're taking in something, alcohol, that's going to change your physiology. So you're changing your physiology, and then you feel better. But there are other ways to change your physiology. Like if you run as hard as you can, just for even 1 mile, like you're going to feel completely different, like completely different. And it doesn't even take that much work. If you get in the sauna, I know everyone doesn't have access to a sauna, but if you get in the sauna, you're going to feel way different. If you get in a cold shower, you're going to feel way different. So like I always say to people, like, just try to change your physiology. Like if you change your mental state, you will be able to change your physiology. And that's what all these drugs are doing, whether it's, nicotine, or whether it's alcohol, whether it's, cannabis, or anything. And again, I'm not against any of those things. They all have, probably against, nicotine in the form of smoking for sure. But, they all have their place at a certain time. But you have to understand, and you have to figure out ways where you can change your physiology on your own. And I think that a lot of people don't do that. But like, you're going to feel way different after you have a cold shower. You're going to feel way different after you go for a hard run, or after you get in the sauna. And like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a medication to change your physiology. So if you want to change your mental state, start with changing your physiology. And then once you change your physiology, your mental state will change automatically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And sometimes it really just comes down to, and this is what came to mind with what you're saying, because it's so true. Sometimes it's just as little as letting people know that the way they're living their life is they're making decisions and taking actions based on how they feel in the moment. Okay. And when you need to just improve your mental state right away in the way you feel, you're going to reach to all the immediate return things, whether it's gambling, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Like, you're going to reach for all those things. And where we actually live in a delayed return environment, if you want to achieve your highest quality of life, start doing the things that actually don't make you feel good in the moment, like cold shower, like maybe, there's freaks out there that some people say it makes them feel good, whatever, or working out or whatever. I actually hate working out. I hate getting in a cold shower. I hate like sometimes meditating because I just want to like chase my stress hormones more and get aroused. Like, I hate a lot of these things I do, but I do them because they actually align more with my long-term values and commitments. So I don't make decisions based off how I feel in the moment. Right. And once people understand that, that can change everything. And I like, that's why I appreciate you so much, Mike, is because most doctors are not saying this. Most psychotherapists are not teaching this. It's like, it's not rocket science in many ways. I'm not saying it's easy, and like look, the transformational journey is very hard in execution, but I think the theory and the principles are relatively simple.
Yeah, and I really like your comment though too, because I think this actually applies not just to mental health, but really to just entrepreneurs in general. Is that like, if you're faced with a decision, and you're feeling a certain way, like, don't take any action. Don't do anything when you're feeling, rotten or at your lowest. Like wait until you're at your highest self, and then make the decision, because you could make, the worst business decision of your life when you're feeling, really bad, and then you can't reverse it, sometimes. And so I think a lot of people do that. Like, just think about, how you feel even right now compared to how you feel this morning, compared to how you feel last night, compared to how you feel yesterday. Like, you're going to feel different, and your emotions are going to influence your actions and your decisions. And I think it's really important for people to know that, like, if you are feeling super emotional, don't take any action. I got that from Robert Greene a while ago, and it really, really stuck with me. And I certainly use it every day. If I'm feeling, really overwhelmed, or I'm feeling angry or something like that, don't write that email back. Don't call that person back. Don't send that text. Like, wait until those emotions, dissipate. Wait until you're feeling better, like your most logical self, and then make the decision. Because if your emotions are ruling you, you are not going to make a good decision.
Yeah. And I would say, you did say action. I would say it's decisions, right? Because like your example yesterday, like, I don't think like that's the magic sauce. You said you were feeling crummy, you're feeling shitty. So you had a cold shower, you worked out, or you ran. Like, I don't think we underestimate that so much. This is what people go through all the time. No matter what, you're going to feel shitty sometimes. And there's two decisions. When you feel shitty, you can reach for the cigarette, you can reach for the scotch, the sex, the porn, the gambling. You can reach for all that. Or you can do what you did. And this is why you're in the place that you're in and you're successful and you live a high quality of life, is because in those moments, you feel probably like doing one of those or a few of those, but you have the cold shower, you run the mile. Like, that's what it takes. And then you know that the return is going to be delayed. You know that everything you're doing is for your macro well-being and quality of life. And that's what I would say. I think you can take action when you feel like crummy, but you have to make sure it's things that are going to give you the return in the future, not just a quick unhealthy coping mechanism.
Yeah. And I hate to do this, Kaylor, but we are kind of running out of time. So do you have any closing statements before you tell everyone where they can find you online?
Yeah, no worries, man. I think that this has been good. I don't think I have anything to add. I think that hopefully we gave some people some nuggets that they can implement to improve their highest quality of life. So, yeah, I think what I would love people to do is, like, Instagram is where most of my stuff is. It's the Kaylor Betts. That's Taylor with a K. So Kaylor and then Betts. And it's just the Kaylor Betts. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm sure that'll be in the show notes. Send me a DM. Like, I love engaging with the people that are on my Instagram, and we can chat. And then check out the Mental Wealth Podcast. And it's Mental Wealth Podcast, not Mental Health Podcast. You were on, I forget what episode you were on, but you were on there as well
I think
too.
it might have been 48, but I might have
48. Yeah, I think it was 48 maybe. So check it out. We had a great episode. You brought the fire, so you can check that out as well too. And we have some amazing guests on as well too.
Yeah, you had Create the Love, who's got a huge following online, and I know Nicole Arbor follows you a lot, and a couple other people, Zuby, who I've had on before, Nicole Hodges, I've had on here. She's actually coming back on next week. So yeah, lots of people that follow Kaylor also follow me, which makes total sense considering we have a lot of the same messaging. So Kaylor, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate this, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
Thanks, Mike. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I love it.